Welcome to Just Love Live. I am your host, Luz Tavarez. Thank you for joining us for another one of our monthly shows where we will discuss major issues facing everyday New Yorkers, from housing and food insufficiency to transportation and public safety. We will also look at how Catholic Charities New York and the greater human services community is responding to these needs. We are in the midst of winter, and on January 23rd, New York City will engage hundreds of volunteers and city workers in the annual Hope Count. The homeless outreach population estimate is mandated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to estimate the number of individuals experiencing homelessness. Today, we have two special guests joining us to discuss homelessness and resources in New York City, Russell Lang and Richard Espinal. Russell Lang is the CEO of the Association of Catholic Homes. He has built over 1,400 affordable housing, family, and senior units across New York, with the majority in New York City. He is a graduate of Amherst College and the NYU Wagner School. Richard Espinal is the Director of Housing Support Services for Catholic Charities Community Services. In this role, Richard oversees Catholic Charity Services and engagement initiatives at various affordable housing developments in the Bronx and Manhattan to promote stability, improve quality of life, and build community. He has master's degrees from City College and Fordham University. Welcome to the show, Russell and Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Doing great, thank you.
Thanks for being here. So right from the onset, I just want to hear from you guys, from your perspectives, what is the issue with homelessness in New York City?
Sure, from a housing standpoint, there is just not enough affordable housing units to house the homeless. And in addition, the infrastructure we have for homeless shelters are beyond capacity right now. And that is leading to an event I don't think the city has really ever experienced before.
That's quite scary.
Yeah.
And how do you describe affordable housing? What does that mean for everyday New Yorkers that are not familiar?
Yeah, sure. It really stems from a federal kind of mindset, and it really looks at kind of a local area, which they call it the area median income, and generally that's published every year, and that is a percentage of the area median income. So generally when people talk about affordable housing, you'll hear the term a lot, 60% of the area median income.
Got it. So Catholic Homes, tell me a little bit about the mission of your agency.
Sure. So Catholic Homes has been in existence for a very long time. We measure ourselves by the amount of units that we have right now. We are close to finishing up in 2024, 3,300 units across 15 assets in Staten Island, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Westchester.
Those are new units.
Correct. Yeah, that's the ones that we own and manage.
Got it. So what type of housing does Catholic Homes build?
The types of housing we build are a variety. We generally are in the family world, where we're building for just general family population, seniors ages 62 and older who are low income and generally on fixed incomes. And then we have our supportive as well, which are the formerly homeless.
And when you talk about supportive, talk to us a little bit about that population.
Yeah.
And Richard, I know you have in your role a very special kind of role that you play. So please chime in.
Yeah, sure. So for supportive, we're looking at individuals or families that are coming from the shelters that are coming into our homes for permanent housing. And what is great about the program is that it also provides services, round-the-clock services for these individuals and families that enter the program. We contract directly with a social service provider, which in our portfolio are our Alliance and Federation agencies, and they provide services to a variety of needs that are in these units.
So what we found is that in addition to the kind of crisis intervention kinds of services that are needed, because a lot of these individuals and families, they came into these units already carrying a lot of baggage. There's a lot of history. whether that be issues with mental illness or substance abuse or really bad relationships that they're kind of escaping from and trying to restart. We have found that in addition to that, those kinds of hand-holding accompaniment types of services, what we're also looking to do is build community and really try to get people to build a home. And you do that by creating spaces where people can learn, people can find new jobs, pick up skills, they can really start to identify with that particular housing development as a stable and secure environment for them to raise their families.
Yeah. So are you literally moving people from the streets to these apartment buildings?
I mean, in some instances, it's not necessarily like right off the street. I wish I could just kind of like go in a van, right? That'd be kidnapping. But I think
okay, Richard,
I think it's coming from folks who are coming out of the shelter system and they have the opportunity to transition to one of these affordable units. There is a lot of kind of prep work that goes in getting them ready. So everything from helping them get furniture to helping them sign up their kids to school, where can they go food shopping, right? How to use the laundry machines, all these things that perhaps some folks are not used to doing.
Yeah, and I would say there's a lot that goes behind the scenes. We wish it'd all be that easy where you would find someone and be able to give them housing immediately. But there is a process because each asset that is generated through the affordable housing program does specifically target a population, whether Richard was saying it could be serious mental illness or substance abuse or just general homeless population. So it really depends on what that social service provider is specialized in.
So you mentioned that you're in the process of building several new buildings, adding additional units. What are the focus populations for those?
Yeah, sure. Right now in the Bronx, we are doing a project right near the Grand Concourse around the 180s called St. Philip Neri. In that population, half the population, about 94 units, are identified folks with serious mental illness. And that we're working with Beacon of Hope to be the social service provider.
And Beacon of Hope provides services too?
Yeah, they provide services. They're providing the security, the staffing, and the programs to make sure these folks become stable.
Yeah, and they specialize in working with this particular population, and that's what's important is that you're not only providing the roof over the heads of these families and these individuals, but again, someone who can actually understand what their needs are and try to work to address them alongside that family or individual.
Yeah.
This is a very important topic, and I'm super excited to continue chatting with you guys. But we're gonna take a break, and then when we come back, we're gonna talk a lot more about housing and homeless in New York City. Thank you.
Catholic Charities has a number of agencies looking to get people back into the mainstream of life. And one of the best ways to do that is to have some place where it's safe, that, you can call your own. It's like, how far can this person, excel if they're just given this leg up?
Welcome back. We're talking about housing and homelessness in New York City. Russell and Richard, thank you for being here. Can you both speak to how Catholic Homes and your services, Richard, are adapting to some of the new populations? I mean, you spoke, Russell, recently about how many more homeless New Yorkers there seem to be, but also we've had a recent surge of asylum seekers that have also need to be housed. Can you just talk a little bit about how that's affecting your services?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because of the type of housing that we're serving, the reality is that many of the new arrivals don't qualify to come into those homes. However, we've, in my department and in the locations where we're serving, have always focused on the idea that beyond the residents of the particular development, we're serving an entire community. And so what we have seen is that when we do, for example, a food distribution or a clothing drive or any other kinds of community-wide event, we are seeing more individuals who we can identify as new arrivals
And
who then
Yeah.
we can refer for additional services and kind of point them in the right direction. Again, it's the idea that, rising tides lifts all ships. And so when we provide services to our residents, we're also looking to see how that can be a positive impact to an entire community. And so we have been seeing a lot of these new arrivals. And then again, it's a lot about guidance, about how to make sure that we put them on some kind of path towards stability.
I have to assume that there's some challenges with your work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I can't say enough about just the professionalism and compassion that my staff on a day-to-day basis demonstrate, because they really have to switch gears, and it very literally can be, at 9 a.m. you're dealing with someone who is a victim of domestic violence, and at 11 a.m. you're dealing with a single father with a special needs child. And right, so throughout the course of the day, they're switching gears, working with different populations and really adapting to the various crises that our families are experiencing. And that's the key, that, there are so many people who, if it was not for this one thing, they probably could be moving a lot, moving forward and getting ahead, but,
And then you have to deal with the other crises, right? I know Catholic Charities has a history of responding to crises, 9/11, Hurricane Maria, some of those natural disasters. So on top of the issues that they're personally experiencing, I'm assuming that when things like this happen, then you're adding another layer of support.
Absolutely. You mentioned at the top of the show in terms of, what's the issue that a lot of our families are experiencing. And part of that reality is that the goalpost keeps moving. So no matter how many times we try to address the infrastructure around, whether it's building more housing or raising the minimum wage or, all these kinds of programs and initiatives to try to help people out, I still can't afford eggs. I still can't buy my kids sneakers. I still need a winter coat, right? So all of these things compile on top of, again, very real problems that folks are experiencing. And so it's a very difficult balancing act for a lot of folks.
Yeah. You guys do great work, of course. I work for Catholic Charities, so I'm definitely a fan of the work that we do. But other than what you're doing, are there government programs that some of the, Russell, from your perspective, developing the housing and managing, and Richard, from your perspective, working more directly with those families, are there government programs that support the work that you do or support the families?
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, being in New York City and New York State, there are robust programs that do really push forward the supportive housing platform. And namely, in addition to the subsidies that we get to build from a construction standpoint, that the tenant also has services, and that is through these, the state program is known as ESHI, and the New York City program is known as 1515. And they are very resourceful in helping stabilize families.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. We couldn't do half of what we do if it wasn't for the collaboration and partnership we have with government agencies as well as other service providers. And so, HRA has been a huge help for so many of our families, but also, reaching out to Department of Aging and DYCD and NYCHA, and right, the whole full alphabet soup of city and state agencies.
Of acronyms.
But I think, again, it's this partnership idea that really allows us to kind of piece together a service plan for these residents. And it's not all going to come from Catholic Charities.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, the government sources are so robust here in this area, but at the same time, Catholic Homes does allocate its own profits to going back to the properties, and we have our own programs. One is called Housing Supportive Services, where we've contributed, I think, over $2.5 million over the last 4 or 5 years to either supplement the services we have or just to create new services.
Now, is that government mandated, or is that something that Catholic Charities has just engaged in?
Well, no, it's not government mandated, and I think, quite frankly, it's the lack of government oversight in that is what allows the flexibility for us to respond to the individual resident, to the individual housing development. And so, you'll see, for example, at one site, a lot of the attention focuses around health and seniors, where at another site, we're doing a lot of workforce development, right? So it really allows us to cater to the needs.
Are there any changes that you would propose, if you could, to either of those government initiatives or just in general in the way the housing landscape exists? I know that's a broad question. Yes, all of the above.
Right. No, I mean, I do think with the migration crisis, I wish there was a better way for the federal programs to incorporate some of the asylum seekers, but we cannot do that. The housing that we're generating is for non-asylum seekers.
Sure. I think the question of area median income, because one of the arguments I hear over and over again is that it's not for my area, right? Like it's
Right.
So whose income are you actually calculating this rent based on? And I think that if we had the ability to kind of, on a micro level, really see like what does this neighborhood really afford to pay? What could the people in this community actually afford to pay, and build rents around that, really would go a long way. Because again, I see it all the time, right? We have working adults, they're sometimes 2 or even 3 jobs, and it's still at an affordable level very difficult for them to pay the rent.
And those areas that used to be affordable aren't so much either anymore.
No, absolutely not. No.
Wow. Yeah. All right, so we're going to take another break, and we're going to come back and continue talking about housing and homelessness in New York City. Thank you.
We were lucky enough to move into St. Augustine's Terrace on September 22nd of 2018. Before living in this apartment, I was basically raised in the projects. Being chosen for this apartment was pretty much like a breath of fresh air.
Welcome back. We're still speaking with Russell and Richard about housing and homelessness in New York City. And Richard, actually Russell, sorry, I'll get to you, Richard, in a sec. But I want to ask you, what is your dream project? If you had no restrictions, what would you build and who would you build it for?
Yeah, great question. I think what the projects we like to see are ones that really are addressing, the community needs. And I think a lot of times, what the product we really like to be is kind of a multi-generational one, where you do build the first phase as either a senior or family with a specific amount of supported population, and then you build adjacent a family and senior population with kind of another supportive amount. And I think that way it really does address kind of the needs, and doesn't feel as much as the community trying to do so much for a single population. And that's what we like to try to do, is to kind of spread the wealth a little bit.
That's kind of what a community is, right?
Yeah.
A mix of a lot of different people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Richard, you mentioned earlier, some of the challenges working with newly housed people. Can you just go into a little more detail and explain how that works? What exactly do you do with these people that are first coming into these new apartments?
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's a question of, one, how do we get them set up with furniture, housewares, making sure that they know how to transfer their Con Edison accounts into their name, making sure that
if they've ever had one.
And I will tell you that we've had plenty of folks who didn't know how to do that, or, so walking them through kind of that process of, this is what having your own place is like, as you said, because some people just never had that experience, setting up their phones, helping them, use the laundry card so that they know how to do their, wash their clothes. It really is a kind of a lot of hand holding at the beginning, what we found is that once you kind of get the basics down, they don't need you on the day-to-day as much, but then it's the other kinds of things that pop up where they're looking for assistance with.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a resident that, for whatever reason, only trusts my staff to help with their money order to pay the rent. So they come every month to make sure that gets done, but it's important that they pay that rent because they never want to end up in the street again.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. At the same time, though, I'm going to ask you the question that is the other side of that coin. I'm sure there's some people that either don't survive or really struggle. What are some of those challenges that you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because what you see is that you have folks who have kind of been kicked around the system for decades, and they've never really had the ability to learn that self-sufficiency or get the kind of services or treatment that they've needed. The truth is that when you've had someone, for example, who's had a pervasive mental illness, that they slip through the cracks and no one wants to deal with them because they're the difficult person and no one wants to hear them out, and so they're not really ready to necessarily be in a kind of family environment, kind of everyday apartment, because they really should be in an environment where there are additional services. But again, there's no real place for them to land, and so that becomes a real challenge when this person could benefit from another site, but like you don't want to kick them out, right? You want to do what you can, but falling short hurts.
Yeah. If there are folks at home that are listening to us or watching the show, and they know someone that's in need of affordable housing, how do they go about accessing that?
Yeah, so my first is to go to NYC Connect, which is the New York City's website, so they can look up the different housing lotteries and apply. They could always come by to any of the Catholic Charities offices where we can assist in helping fill out those applications because, again, there are a lot of government services, but sometimes the application itself can be a little daunting for folks. Absolutely. So we want to help them with that as well.
Okay. And what are some of the, I think I asked you this before, but I want to be very clear. What are some of these services that you think are missing? So that would prevent some of those folks from maybe falling between the cracks, or those folks that need a little more support?
Yeah, I think at least for my teams, we've been trying to build up a lot in terms of our social work staff, in terms of being able to provide what I call counseling with a capital C, right? Where we're really able to kind of almost in a clinical way deal with some of the things that folks. I don't want to put this lightly. When you've been dealing with a history of, let's say, domestic abuse, or you've been incarcerated, there's just so much baggage there that it's difficult to kind of help that person unload that. And I feel like I just wish I had that magic wand to help alleviate that burden.
And I have to assume that it's years of trauma, so it's not gonna change in a year.
No, it takes time.
So,
yeah.
Wow. This is all very serious and sad, honestly, but I think you guys do great work, and I'm glad you were able to give us perspective from building and developing the affordable housing and maintaining folks housed. But tell our viewers at home what you really want them to know about your work. I'm going to start with you, Russell. What do you think is important that New York City knows about building affordable housing?
I think it's a really wonderful industry that has done a tremendous amount of work in New York City, and New York State has a lot more work to do. But it's really kind of a wonderful industry that really tries to take in heart the best of what we can for the community, and that's kind of the overall industry perspective of affordable housing. And then just at Catholic Homes, I think it's really great to be a part of an organization that has been on the front lines of poverty for so long, and kind of understanding that level and kind of really trying to incorporate that in the work that we do has been a tremendous benefit.
Wow. Richard?
Yeah, I think in terms of what I would love people to understand is that they also have a role to play. And I say that to kind of almost from like a biblical perspective, right? When they said, we're hungry, the first thing he says, well, what do we have, right? He says, well, we got 5 loaves and 2 fish, right? So everyone can contribute something. And I think that if people can see that by cooperating and working together, they can benefit. So when their one housing development is improving and another, like all of this comes together to lift up a community. And I think that we've kind of shied away from this idea of community.
Right.
And I think we have to get back to that model.
Well, that word community has been very powerful during this segment.
Yeah.
You guys mentioned it many times. So I want to thank you guys for being part of my community today.
Absolutely.
And engaging our community on such an important topic. Thank you to our guests for helping us understand the true needs of homeless New Yorkers. Catholic Charities provides help and hope to those in need year-round. Please consider getting involved by volunteering, donating, or contacting them if you need support. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Just Love Live.